Hey there, Sterile Processing Universe. My name's Hank Balch. You're watching Driving Dirty, a new five-part, or we'll say 5-day mini-series here that we're beta testing on the Beyond Clean network to try to catch folks maybe on their commute time into work, or if you're already at work, maybe this is your first break time, you early first shifters here, getting your coffee or getting your donuts here to keep you going as you fight the dirty. Regardless, if you're watching this live or if you're checking this out, maybe even on the way home, I appreciate your time. And we got a good conversation in store today. We got a guest that's going to be joining us. We'll introduce him in just a moment. And we're going to be talking about all kinds of themes from rep collaboration to orthopedics to technology to logistics, and maybe even some conversations about robotics. We'll also be talking about the power of networking and LinkedIn, as well as the innovator spirit and what it takes to disrupt, kind of what that mindset is, what the vision is, what that requires at the early stage, and obviously bringing maybe new technologies to market. So we'll talk through all of those things and more with our live guests. So just FYI, again, we are live. This is a live show. As of right now, it is November 20th, 2024. And it's about 10 o'clock Eastern. If you are tuning in live, we will have the comments open. So if you're tuning in LinkedIn, on X, on Facebook, or on YouTube, please jump in and say hi. Tell us where you're tuning in from. I already see Michael Compton out there. What's up, Mike? Love you, brother. Good to have you tuning in. If you got any questions about anything sterile processing related or any of the other topics that we're going to be discussing with our guest, agree or disagree. We don't need a lot of yeses in the comments. If you've got strong opinions, if it's a no, we want to hear it and we want to engage with it. So please feel welcome to put whatever you want in there as long as it's safe for work. Okay. With that, I'm going to run a brief commercial here and we'll come back in just a couple of moments to introduce our guest.
So thinking about how far we've come in the last 5 years, it was not necessarily clear that we would be this, but there was a clear need to bring the sterile processing community together and to take that momentum, that passion, and that enthusiasm and really channel it into elevating the profession and gaining a lot of clarity to how we do our jobs every day, what we should expect from our career between podcasting and conferences, and just the engagement that we've gotten from the industry. We're able to do some really great things collectively, not just Beyond Clean, but with everybody that's out there in sterile processing.
Since I've joined the team, we've all seen some crazy shifts in the industry, not only from the frontline technicians, but also from manufacturers, the service providers in the industry who are paying attention to the specific needs and the desires of the people they're trying to sell their products and services to. And I think that Beyond Clean has been a huge facilitator of connecting and really filling the gap between the people who are using these products, implementing these services, and the people creating them. There's more on the other end of their product being used than a sale in their pocket. It's people. And we're the people brand. We care about the people. We care about the vendors. We care about the frontline technicians. And I think there's such power in the ability that we've had to bring people together.
We are still just scratching the surface of what is potential in the industry to do. There's so many avenues that we can go for building more access to education, for instance, to inspiring new voices to come into the platform to speak, to educate, to inspire. We are building a sterile processing culture as an industry. And through platforms like Beyond Clean, we're able to create things like artwork, music, books. Who would have ever thought that a healthcare niche like sterile processes is going to have all those things? And yet, here we are today at the tip of the spear with a whole army behind us of sterile processing clinicians that believe in the mission. Moving forward, though, we're already looking outside of the U.S. There's now global Beyond Clean brands that are already dotting the map that are doing the same kind of educational revolution that we've done here in the U.S. And as we say all the time, we're still just getting started.
All right. Well, welcome back to the live show again, Driving Dirty this morning. My name is Hank Balch. And we've got a special guest that's going to be joining us. I'm going to go ahead and bring him in studio now. Zach Disbrow, the Ortho Outsider. And I guess you do a couple of other things besides just being outsider, Zach. But welcome to the show with us today.
Thanks, Hank. So glad to be here.
So, I mean, it's been probably a week or so, maybe even less, since we've been connected. And like a lot of our stories go, I was just out there surfing on LinkedIn, trying to pay attention to the conversations that are happening in the industry. And I came across one of your posts. I thought it was very insightful. And I remember commenting and saying, hey, this is a unique perspective. It earned you a follow, and I want to see more. And we ended up reaching out, and it was good timing for this show. So yeah, really appreciate you coming on today with us.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be here. It's one of the great things about LinkedIn is you can just connect with people, and then things that you couldn't have predicted happen and can happen quickly.
Yeah. So for folks who don't know you, which is most people in this industry, because you are an outsider, like you said, what's your story? What's your background? How'd you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I'm an ortho outsider, playing with the idea of ortho newbie, and I use that outsiderness to ask questions that just seem a little bit different. And while I'm an ortho outsider, I bring a lot of perspective about new products, like digital products and innovation. And so what I've seen in other industries, operations, manufacturing, insurance, employee benefits programs, actually point to the mechanisms of change that can still be applied in orthopedics and medical device sales. And so I love learning about here and then bringing in my knowledge of what's changed elsewhere, what worked, what didn't, to help apply and catalyze change.
Would you consider yourself kind of a techie, or are you coming at this more of like a math guy? You coming at this from a business guy? You all of the above? Is there another category maybe that I missed that you would define yourself?
I'm a people guy. Like,
okay, great.
I was just watching that video you played, and I wrote down, from what you guys said, we are not sure it would be this, but you knew the people were there, you had a passion for them, and they needed help. And you said, I'm not falling in love with the technology. I'm falling in love with the person that has a problem. And if I can solve that problem with any piece of technology, with the system, with art, with all the things that you listed, that's success.
I know we talked last week. I asked you this question offline, but I'm going to ask it again because I really appreciated the story. The Ortho Outsider. So you could have been solving a lot of different problems. There's a lot of problems to solve outside of healthcare. There's a lot of problems, obviously, to solve inside of healthcare. What about ortho in particular captured your imagination and caused you at least for a moment to pause and say, maybe there's something here to solve?
Yeah. It was learning about reps, learning about what they like. The best day a rep can have is a day where they're a subject matter expert, the device expert with a surgeon, where they get to learn about new procedures. They have a medical mindset and they want to train and mentor the next generation. And there's something about that really resonated with me, but also caught me off guard. There's this typical mystique of what a medical device salesperson is, and it probably twists a little bit towards Hollywood pharma. You drive in your Porsche, you chuck some narcotics at a dock, you get paid a boatload of money, and then you go play golf or drink at fancy restaurants. But what I found is something very different. It's these people just trying every day, waking up at 5 a.m, going to bed late because they're just constantly worried about the procedures and the patient outcome and helping their surgeon. And, they're sterile processing techs and being a part of a team, and their passion really showed something that was important. And then when you coupled it with the lack of tools that they have, one of the early reps that I was talking to, he made this point of why can I buy Tupperware on Amazon and I know exactly where it is, but I can't tell you where my implants are. That disconnect between the tools they have as a consumer and those tools they have as a healthcare professional were an absolute mismatch. And so I want to step in and try to help solve that gap, fix that gap.
Yeah, I saw that post about the Tupperware stuff too. So it's interesting that you bring that up. That perception that you describe there of these medical device reps and, who they are and what they, uh, demographically, maybe how they appear from the outside looking in, that perception from the sterile processing perspective, I think, is also a challenge, because we do see, uh, we see these reps coming in many times, and uh, to your point, they depending on how experienced they are, what company that they're working for, that they have this aura of I've got very important things to do, and potentially, uh, depending on that dynamic, what I'm doing in sterile processing is not the most important thing that I've got to do. I got more important things to do. This is something that I've got to do that's got to get done, but I don't really want to be here in sterile processing. I don't really want to be interfacing with this team. The I want to be interfacing with are in another department at even a like an architecturally higher level in the hospital, so they're higher up on the floors. I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
And that aura just kind of feeds into, again, the perspective of, who are these medical device reps?
Yeah.
And how do we bring them together in that cultural setting that we do have to interface? But I think you bring up, and there's a couple of different things that we can kind of slice through that, but the tools and the resources piece, I think, is something that on the sterile processing side of the equation we can identify with, because very rarely are you going to talk to a sterile processing tech or leader that feels like they've got adequate resources and adequate technology to do their job. And I don't think we realize the depth of that gap on the medical device side as well. So I think it's really important that you're surfacing that.
Yeah. You alluded to it earlier, but yesterday I put out a post for my reps and distributors and just said, hey, I'm going to talk to Hank and the sterile processing team tomorrow. Like, what can I take to them? What can I share with them? I'm not the rep, I'm not the expert, but I can be a conduit. I can be a part of a conversation. And one of the things that came back from that and some of the DMs was there are reps that look at sterile processing as your teammate. And I first identified that they sometimes feel like they let their teammates down when they go through these huge processes of finding implants that were delivered to the incorrect place, getting trays for a surgery that was incorrectly placed on their calendar as another procedure. And there was this moment where I would hear this sigh and go, and then I got to go to my guy at sterile processing and say, let me get it through.
Right.
And I would say that, not every rep is going to be the best. Not every sterile processing tech is going to be the best, but there is something about being a clean freak and choosing to be involved in this community, choosing to better yourself every day. That means you're probably closer to the cream of the crop, closer to the top. And I think that's true of the reps I identify with on LinkedIn, is that those people talk about teamwork and how you guys have the same problems. And it's not a tit for tat. They messed it up, and screwed me. It's a, hey, how do we work together? How do we best make this happen? Because my success is your success and your success is my success. And if we're anywhere else, we got to figure it out for the patient.
Right. Do you feel like this is a conversation I have with a lot of the companies and innovators that we work with, especially these that are kind of new to market or coming in the market of trying to build a solution or product or service or what have you, and they take their sample from LinkedIn. But I believe, and I'm curious to get your insight, agree, disagree, or nuance. I believe your sampling on LinkedIn is a skewed sample because the most likely rep that's going to be on LinkedIn are those that are intentionally seeking networking and support and encouragement. So you got this whole demographic space out there. And so you're already kind of talking to the potentially higher performers on the rep side, the ones that do want to be collaborative and supportive. But then you got this whole side of the industry that's not plugged into LinkedIn, not out there having the same networking conversations or hearing the same challenges or interviews, panel discussions, whatever that we're talking about today. Is that standard fair? Or am I kind of misrepresenting that cross section of where the industry sits today for some of these challenges that we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, being cognizant of what I can say and what I can't say is, I'd say, like, I'm only exposed to the LinkedIn side, so I can't make a comment on non-LinkedIn engaged reps. So I don't think it's exclusive one or the other.
Right.
But as someone who's trying to build, like, I want to engage with people who are early adopters, people who think about the future of their industry, people who are more willing to try something new. And so, wearing my new product hat, I wonder why there's not more founders across every other little niche of LinkedIn engaging with potential customers, the people who raise their hand to say they're most invested in the future of this industry and their role in it. Like,
Hmm.
I think it's great for me. I get to
Yeah.
put out content every day that gets reactions, some positive, some negative, some's learning, some's validating. Like, wow, what a great tool.
Right. It's an interesting dynamic. I'll say the broader medical device space, and then in particular the sterile processing space, I believe is highly over engaged compared to
Hmm.
uh, similar industries, sizes, or, or demographics out there that you would just, if you pick in, like we'll say micro farming, right? Like random, okay, agriculture micro farming.
Yeah.
Um, there's going to be people present on LinkedIn in those niches, but potentially, and I think not in representative percentages or numbers that you find in medical device. We are like highly engaged. There's a large numbers in med device, even into the sterile processing kind of sub niche. There's a lot of conversations. There's a lot of people that are engaged, both from the vendor side, as you're alluding to, but also from the clinician side. And I just don't feel like that's as true. It's interesting. I follow some guys in the pest control industry, kind of
Okay.
random.
I like
And
it.
yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn. I started following some of the guys, just to see exactly what you're talking about. Like, how does a completely
Yeah.
different industry, how are they engaging? And
Yep.
it's one of the ways that they got on my radar, like we were talking about before we started recording, was this guy had a podcast uh, called like uh, pest like coast to coast pest control or something like that. And yeah, they just had a podcast talking about different kinds of bugs or rodents that you're needing to remove from your housing or apartments, and like the different styles and poisons or traps or whatever. And
Yeah.
it is really interesting to see the same dynamic and model play out in completely different context, and to see that that grow, but I think med device has maybe been ahead of the curve on the networking side of that, and has invested really strongly in platforms like LinkedIn, for the
Yeah.
past 10, 15 years. And so it's a really special time and place to be in, specifically to your point as a founder coming in and saying, let me get a pulse on what's going on and let me ask a bunch of questions. And yeah, you've got a great audience on LinkedIn to make that happen.
Yeah. It's been a journey to go from trying to get attention, trying to get conversations, to having some, to figuring out I actually have friends here. Like, and then,
People actually liked me.
well, not just that, but it went from, hey, I'm just messaging you about this, to like, hey, me and this person have this one dialogue that go on. We talk about Mike Milligan's hats. Like,
Mhm.
there's these different things of knowing things about people and realizing that I don't just want to ask this person a question because I need to learn something for my business. I'm actually wondering how they're doing. And then getting that back,
Hmm.
there's a like moving from LinkedIn to having a phone number, I think is a really big indicator of that, and how willing someone is to buy into your mission and buy into the problem you're trying to solve, and just you as a person. And seeing that happen was something that I hadn't predicted when I started on LinkedIn, but I realized, like, wow, this is powerful. This is great.
Yeah, it's funny that you brought up the phone number thing. I think I've said this on another podcast before, but I used to tell my buddies, if you're doing online dating, your goal should be to get to that phone number stage as quick as you can. Get offline and get into real life as quick as you can, right? Like,
Yeah.
get the coffee date, like try to make that initial time as small as you can, because to your point, the quicker you can establish that deeper relationship, the quicker that you're going to find, like in the dating atmosphere, is there actually something here?
Yeah.
In the networking atmosphere, do I actually like this person, or is this an online persona that I'm going to cut through in 5 minutes on the call? And yeah, like you start making those personal connections, and it's a huge game changer in the value, the depth of the content, the fact that you don't have just one shot to get this person's attention or to ask them questions. It's not like, man, if I don't get a response to this comment on their post, I'm donezo. They're never going to pay attention to me again. It's like, no, like I can text them, or I can send them a private message and continue just like a normal conversation.
Yeah, I'm smiling and laughing because I remember the fear and the anxiety of starting, of like, if this person doesn't answer this cold email, this cold DM, I'm done. There's nothing left. All my options are gone. It's like, no, actually, that wasn't true. Like, people just don't answer cold DMs. But when you provide value first, which LinkedIn lets you do, it lets you put your thoughts out, like what's different, what's the same. Like, you get to earn their trust over time with minimal investment from them until the point where you say something interesting, or you have a connection in common, and somehow Hank looks at your page on a random Thursday or Friday, and the next week you're talking to him on a podcast.
Yeah. You got to say yes, though.
You have to say
part
yes.
Of that. Yeah. And it's really hard. I know LinkedIn, just like all these other platforms, there's a lot of spammers out there, and there's a lot of folks that are not coming from the mindset that you're describing of adding value. I mean, key phrase there, right? Like, I think anybody who's coming to LinkedIn, not with that on the forefront of adding value, if they're coming as a taker or as a user, like not like a typical user, right, that you'd say just like is using the platform, but like a user that you're just there to get something from somebody, and then you're going to close the app and move on. That is very, very transparent and easy to see. And it may work in the short term, but over the long term, people and the industry, whatever industry that you're in, they're going to realize that. And your interactions, your network, your reach is going to reflect that dynamic. Same thing. The opposite is true, though. If you're genuine, and if you're trying to add value, if you're trying to be real in those cold reach outs on your DMs, that's going to show through over time too. And even someone, to your point, who may have not responded to your first message 6 months ago, if they stumble across you again, because I get this all the time, right? Like, I'm really bad about responding to DMs. But then like someone will get on my radar and be like, oh crap, you messaged me 8 months ago, never responded. But now, would you like to connect and have a phone call?
Yeah.
But it's about bringing value. So this is really key, because I think a lot of people believe in bringing value, but it's a challenge to know, like, what does that actually look like? And for you, the value that you're bringing is not necessarily subject matter expertise, because you're classifying yourself from the very beginning. I'm an outsider, guys. I'm here to learn. How are you navigating that model to bring value while not bringing it today as the expert in the field?
Yeah. I think the first value I want to create for a rep is that they're heard, that someone is out there listening to them and taking them seriously. Because I see exasperation when reps explain their problems, and frustration, and they sound like they've been saying it over and over and over, and they don't expect change anymore. And so maybe there's an aspect of hope in there. That's the first value I can create. But then when we start talking about more tangible value, I want to take different rep experiences that I get to view, and I want to synthesize and bring it back to the community and say something important. And so what that might look like is, I started learning about how much time reps spend every day just coordinating and answering the question, where is it at? Where are my assets at? Where are my implants at? And so it started with conversations, and I could summarize that and bring it back to the group as like a Monday insight post, a story about someone trying to find something. Another way we can go deeper is say, hey, let's do a survey. And I did this, and I got 17 responses, and I asked, how many texts do you send to your team every day that's just about answering the question, where is it? This isn't about sales. This isn't funny memes and team cohesion and stuff.
Come on, the memes are good, though.
They're great. They're great, but they're not the problem we're trying to like get really nuanced about. And of the 17 respondents, I think 12 said they send more than 100 text messages a day, with 3 of them sending more than 200 text messages a day. When you put that in context, the average American sends 72 text messages an entire day over all their things. So you're telling me there's reps out there that are sending twice the average American's text messages just trying to find out where their stuff is? That's starting to quantify a problem and put a number on the scope of the problem that the industry hasn't been able to do yet. And that problem sits in the background. And what's great is that reps see that and they start responding by saying things like, oh, and I checked my call logs. I average 19 phone calls a day too. Or a rep in VA that told me every 2 days, I create from scratch an Excel file about where every asset and implant is. And then I do it again in another 2 days.
Right.
And you start putting a size to the problem of how many hours are we spending doing this? And it starts pointing towards creating value.
So it's funny. We went to the examples of Mark Copeland was asking at the same time, hey, can y'all give some examples of what giving value looks like? So right on the money, Cope. Thanks for weighing in there. You're doing something, Zach, that a lot of people are afraid to do, especially innovators. So I really want to get your perception on this. You're being public with your journey and with your questions and with your answers, right? But even though you're having some of these phone calls, I know like in the background, giving some more insight or what have you, but a lot of these things that you're walking through, that you're posting about, anybody can see. Any other innovator can see that, hey, they're talking about logistics and timing and text messages and the workload and the challenges, and they're continuing to talk about this. And so are you not afraid of having these conversations publicly, kind of weigh into your approach on this?
Honestly, I'm terrified.
Okay. Well,
I want to have all the knowledge. I want to have all the technologists working for me. I wish I did. But I mean, Mark's here, and in one of my first conversations with him, he said something that stuck with me for so long. Zach, reps need more options. And I'm just one person. And honestly, if I was the only person working on these problems, they might not be that significant. Maybe there's something wrong with me. But seeing a bunch of people working on these, what I've actually found is that there's a group of very forward-thinking, data-first medtech innovators that I hope are going to reshape the way we all do work in 5 to 10 years. Going to reshape patient outcomes, going to reshape efficiency. You know, my personal metrics are, do we get more reps home for dinner with the family? Do we get better sleep at night because we're not worrying about the case in the morning? And do we have less miles on our car because we just wanted to, just go see if it's there? Like, if we all bring that approach and we all work together, we're going to do some really amazing things. As I step back and think about it from my area of expertise, like building new products and services, there's definitely been a switch from the stealth mindset of, I'm not going to tell anyone what I'm building. It's brilliant. Please don't touch my notebook because that's where all the knowledge is. And at the end, I'm going to open it and you're going to be shocked with how amazing this is. But what happens is we don't really understand the problem. And so we build for our perception of it rather than for the sterile processing techs, for a reps tech, for an admins, for nurses. And so we only get good solutions by truly engaging with them and saying, you are the expert on the problem. You help me understand all the nuances and implications. And we're going to build trust along the way. And I'm going to try to iteratively solve it. And I'll admit, we're probably not going to get it perfect the first time. But then we're going to come back better. And we're going to come back better. And we're going to come back better. And we're going to go, we're going to go on this journey together.
Yeah, the angles to that hit me from kind of like an educator and marketing perspective as well, because we're making the same case for manufacturers and innovators that are trying to bring products into sterile processing to solve, or, first case in the operating room, supply chain, or whatever. And the conversation that we have with vendors on the marketing side is historically, if you're looking at direct marketing, I get a magazine, I open it up, your ad is there, and I'm engaging directly with whatever your ad says, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that plays out in a lot of different other scenarios, right? Like you watch an ad on TV or what have you. But if you're interacting with digital content in a public forum, and your marketing message is out there in the same place that you're having these kind of conversations, then you get to see, and your customers get to see, how the market reacts and engages with this concept it is that you're marketing, solution that you're marketing, and the angles of insight that you receive from seeing that group dynamic in responding to this. And it's not like, okay, yeah, that was a great ad, I loved it in the magazine, but you have no idea that I loved it because you can't see my response. I didn't hit the like button on the magazine. I didn't share it with my coworker. I didn't comment on here. Like, you have no idea from the marketing or educator or the innovator side to say, hey, this is working. The only thing that you get to see is, the results down the road. And so, I think bringing that into the public model before the tech is even built is genius. And I want to, specific for sterile processing folks that are tuning in, I mean, back in 2012, this light bulb moment kind of went off for me, and I said, hey, I got a lot of help that I need in my department. Like, there's a lot of things I want fixed on the tech side that I can't solve. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the resources. I can't solve myself. There's a lot of products that I'd love to have out there. And the temptation, I think, for clinicians is like, we get this idea and we feel like, oh, this could be a big idea. I'm going to keep it to myself. And then one day, someday, like, something's magically going to happen and I'm going to be able to bring this thing to market. Or option B is I can be public with the gap and the opportunity and even the idea sometimes, and just kind of be honest with yourself. Like, some ideas like you can bring to market, you can go with it. Like, there's a lot of innovators that are coming directly out of sterile processing with their ideas and saying, I'm going to do something with this. But then there's a whole nother dynamic to say, hey, there's a lot of smart people out there like Zach that want to solve for these problems, have the time, have the funding, sometimes have the insight that I don't have. But if they had the idea or even the context of the challenges, they could get off to the races, and this problem could be solved in a year or two instead of 20 years when I happen to have enough time to try to bring my idea to the forefront. So if you're tuning in and you've got ideas or pain points, like, do what Zach is saying. And what I'm saying is bring those things out to LinkedIn on a post or on an article or whatever and say, hey guys, I really wish that someone would solve this. And I'm telling you, and Zach, I'm assuming you would say the same thing. There's innovators out there that are paying attention to that clinical conversation, and they're paying serious attention, and they're getting serious ideas and serious momentum, and they're doing something with it. And that's how we solve these things.
Yeah. Just to completely yes and that, thinking about myself before I had started this journey into orthopedics, thinking about, hey, I have this capability to build, but I want to make sure I build something important and I need to know what matters. I would have lost my mind for someone who said, I have this problem, and I went out and I found 5 other people like me, and we all have this problem and we want to be a part of solving it. My gosh, that's the first 6 months of a business, is just figuring out who actually has the problem, deeply understanding it, and then starting to build something for you.
Yep.
So I think it's really interesting that when surgeons start companies, they start in an advisor, like a senior clinician role, but we don't see sterile techs. We don't see reps start in that same role in a company of being the subject matter expert. And I think we should. We just need to listen to sterile techs more. We need to listen to reps. We need to listen to our admins, our nurses. And so, like, let's use that model that the surgeons perfected and say, hey, we matter too. Our problems are important, and we can help this system save money as well.
Yeah. What's great about all of these social networks, but in particular LinkedIn, like I know we're kind of harping on LinkedIn. We're live streaming to YouTube, to Facebook, and to X right now too. So not leaving those platforms out, but it's an interesting dynamic professionally, I think, in the LinkedIn context, because there are so many innovators in this space that are on LinkedIn. There are so many clinicals and reps in this space that are all in this one platform. And the purpose of coming to LinkedIn is to do business, right?
Yeah.
That's why people are here. It's not a dating site. It's not a like funny meme site. Like you can find those things. You can still find those things on LinkedIn, but that's not the primary purpose, even though it's great for some Friday funnies.
Yeah.
But that a dynamic of crowdsourcing, maybe we can call it, of your ideas or your challenges, it brings to mind a common phrase. And if you use this phrase, if you've written about this phrase, or if it's up in your office, don't take offense to this, but I'm going to kind of knock it real quick here. It's this idea that, leaders say sometimes, don't come to me with a problem, come to me with a solution. And, there's pros to that idea, because you just don't want a bunch of complainers coming and complaining. It's also extremely unfair and short-sighted if you look at it from the other side, because you do, as a leader, as an innovator, you do want to know what the problems are.
Yeah.
Even if that frontline clinician or rep doesn't have the solution today, like, are you saying that they have to solve all the problems before they bring them to you? Or they got to have the answer? I think that's just really short-sighted, really narrow in the approach to solving these kinds of things, crowdsource wise. So I want to lower that barrier for folks. If you're a rep, if you're a sterile processing tech, if you have no clue what the solution is, that's fine. You got to surface the problem and the issues, and you got to bring that forward. And if you're commenting on the post and you also have no solutions, that's fine. Do what Zach is saying and come in and say, yeah, I don't have to solve this either, but these are the headaches it causes. This is how long it's been going on. Maybe even like, these are the things we've tried that have not worked in the past. Man, that kind of insight just from a leader, and then also from the innovator side, I got to think that's gold.
Yeah. I don't know if anyone would want to do this publicly, but I was just thinking about the framing of like, is it me or ... is X, Y, and Z a problem? Maybe it is just you. Maybe your facility is very unique, and then you get to learn something about that. But it's also a way of putting out a question and just starting a conversation. And my guess is, more often than not, someone else is going to respond with, oh, I thought it was just me. It's us. And there's a lot of power in us.
Mm-hmm. So how do you handle disagreement in this stage, or maybe even like, you've brought other technologies to market in the past. So like, what does it look like for you when you think you've got the idea it's going to start solving these problems, and then you're confronted with someone who strongly disagrees with either your take on the problem or your take on the solution? Like, what is that? How do you filter that through your mindset as an innovator?
Yeah, there's a natural defensiveness to want to prove that your idea is right, but that's actually counterproductive. What I try to do is harness curiosity and empathy. If 3 people over here thought this would be really helpful and this person doesn't, I wonder what's different about their situation. I wonder why this wouldn't be helpful. I wonder if maybe something else would be more helpful. And I wonder if that thing would also be helpful for the original 3 people. Mm-hmm. And I've spent a couple of years mentoring early stage founders. And one of the things I always try to remind them is that you are not your idea. Your identity is not wrapped in it. Mm-hmm. If this becomes the next Apple, I don't know, pick something that's way too big to be actually achievable. Like, okay, that's great. That's great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. And I encourage them to take a different approach and say, try to kill this idea as fast as possible. Prove this is not a business. Prove there's not someone that has a problem. Prove that there's not a technology that can solve it, and prove that you can't do it cost effectively. If you can do that, end the project and get your life back and move on to your next project. And that's fantastic. That's a win too.
Yeah. Who's the guy who said fell fast? I don't know if
Yeah.
Elon Musk or Simon Sinek, one of those guys, but, but yeah, that's the dynamic that you're describing there is if it ain't going to work, you want to know
Yeah.
sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I'm kind of getting all up in your business now, so you can take this whatever direction that you want to go with it. But
I'm intrigued.
there's a little there's a little bit of humility that's required in doing what you're talking about. How did you gain the humility that you have? Was there a moment in your professional career and your personal life that that kind of brought that level of humility home to you that you bottled up and are using now? Like, do you humble yourself daily? I don't know. How do you approach this?
Oh man.
I mean, because you're having to admit you don't know something. Like,
Yeah.
the way that you're describing yourself, even in the branding as the outsider, immediately is lowering that not the barrier, but like a lot of people when they personal brand, the first thing they want to do is put expert at the end of whatever title it is.
Yeah.
I'm the XXX expert,
Yeah.
Oh, not 3 X's. I'm the XYZ expert. That's what I was trying to.
I get you.
X's there. So yeah, like that's a temptation. You feel like in order to get the network's response and to get that value that you want out of the audience, you got to put yourself up here as the expert. But you're actually doing the opposite, and you're saying, "I'm at the bottom of the totem pole, guys. Tell me what y'all think about things." So, where's that coming from personally?
Yeah. I think I formed that ability. I spent the first 9 years of my career in the Army. And there's a perception that the military is about telling people what to do or being told what to do. But actually, it's a place that is really good at creating boxes and saying, you own everything in this box. And one of the boxes I owned was an organization with 160 plus different people in it. We had 60 different job functions, and I was trained in none of them.
Okay.
And it was a place where I learned to not have the answer, but I learned to set the context. I learned to understand the problem and where we're trying to go on a long roadmap, and then say, hey, Sergeant First Class, like, this is the context. This is how you fit into it. What's your plan to make this happen? Bring your point of view in. Hey, specialist. Hey, private. Like, you're the one person who does radio repair. Like, bring your expertise in. And I've seen like Army leaders bring that same humility and that ability to bring people together and coalesce around understanding a problem and where we're trying to get to. Be a real differentiator for them in the startup ecosystem.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic because you almost need a lot of confidence in order to be comfortable humbling yourself to the level of not having to have all the answers or not having to be the smartest person in the room. I think Michael Dell or somebody has that quote that says, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
And yeah, in this ecosystem, if you're trying to bring these new perspectives on solving these systemic challenges, if you think you got it all figured out, that's a warning sign from the very beginning. And yet it's not uncommon to come across folks that are in those roles, trying to solve these problems. And it's almost like they're deaf to the responses or the challenges or the feedback, especially maybe even like once the technology is kind of implemented or rolled out. To your point, like a lot of these reps, it's not that there's not systems in place. If it's a spreadsheet or if it's some kind of tracking system or, process, there's oftentimes systems already in place, but somebody's not listening to the responses and the frustrations from the reps in the field saying, this ain't working for me, guys. It's not doing what you think it's doing. And it just seems to be falling on deaf ears. And so we get up to that dynamic that They're not listening to everybody else in the room, and they're just, it's kind of the bet's on here, and we're going to let it ride. And I don't know. That doesn't seem like a good idea.
No, because then people start doing what works for them. They cut corners. The system isn't used as it's supposed to be used. And then the data at the top end that someone's going to present to the CFO of Big Ortho LLC is actually wrong, because the people were using hacks to actually just get their job done at the end of the day.
Right. Well, let's switch gears here for a second, because I promised the people your perspective on robotics and orthopedics. Because this was that post that got my attention. We've been thinking about it on the sterile processing side, which just real quick, again, out the context for your post, but I think it's important to call out here. There's all these conversations from the innovative side, the surgical side, on the opportunity with robotics and orthopedics, what the future looks like and whatnot. But in sterile processing, when we hear robotics, we hear complexity, we hear larger instruments for the most part, we hear complexities in the instructions for use, we hear longer turnaround times, we hear more fragile instrumentation. So there's a lot of bells that go off in our minds when we hear that, and they're not all exciting bells because of the resource constraints and all the challenges and whatnot. So I'm trying to look at your comments from, both perspectives here, but speak to maybe what you said and then what some of the responses were, and we'll go from there.
So I think the post was along the lines of like, robots are sexy and they're what we talk about, but I don't think they fully capture the future of ortho. And to expand on that a little bit, I think we talk about robots because they sound futuristic, and they are, and they'd be this amazing technical marvel. But when they're but if we forget that they're a part of an ecosystem of other innovations, imaging and navigation, cementless implants, 3D printed implants. Like, when we take those as a basket and say, oh wait, it's not just robots. Robots aren't doing this alone. It's all of these things together. Wow, we have a profound opportunity to improve patient outcome and improve the efficiency of the OR. And that's something that we should talk about. But it's not just robots. It's all of those things together. Go ahead.
Is the shorthand then like the future is efficiency, or the future is technology? Like, is that not descriptive or sexy enough to capture people's attention? Why do you think that focus is? Because these are not dumb people or inexperienced people that are saying the future is robotics, and so they're speaking from some perspective. But you're saying it's just not holistic enough to capture what's really going on in the ecosystem.
It misses out all of the other changes that are driving this. It's not like a robot's going to, drive to work tomorrow, get out at the ASC, go and perform procedures, and then leave and be all alone. There's a lot of other important things changing as well. The
robot's going to stay there, right? It's not going to come and go. It's going to stay there. But everything else.
But like, let's just remember that all of these things happen in context, and it's just not one. There's a belief that innovation is in one inspirational moment with one person in a garage who has a light bulb idea, and then the world is never the same. But when you look back and study it, what actually happens is many things change. Many things change within one product, and many things change in an industry to catalyze or enable something to happen more quickly. And so it's a part of a holistic shift. I think my point of view personally is that that's really exciting. And like, as someone who may have a knee procedure done one day, I want to live in that more efficient, cheaper world for me. But I also don't hear us talking about the people in the system. And that's the angle I bring it to, is like, but you haven't talked about what it means for a sterile tech. You haven't talked about what it means for admin, for nurses, and for the reps that I work with. And so we can make robots and we can make better implants and they can do all these things. But if at the end of the day, these guys and girls are still driving all over Kingdom Come to figure out if something's there, but I can order a pizza at Domino's and look at my Domino's pizza tracker. Like,
no, that's fake. They said that's fake. I saw like a news article that says they just kind of automate that thing, and it's not really what's
Really?
the status of your pizza. But your
yeah,
point's well taken, right?
yeah.
They can track things, so that's not the only thing. But yeah, I did see that Domino's one. I was like, ah, they got. Now I
Thanks
don't
for
know if
holding me
that's
honest.
true. And I don't know if that's true, but I did see an article that said, yeah, that's just like an automated little graphic that makes you feel better about the status of your stuff.
Well, it made me feel well enough to mention it here. But like my point of view is like our technologists are doing a fantastic job, and we need to include the people in this. And
Right.
your comment about, well, this is what it means for sterile tech. Like I'd never considered that.
Right.
And so I hope there's someone out there who is considering it and thinking about the ways to decrease the complexity in your life, because the reality of the situation I see is complexity in a rep's life becomes complexity in a sterile tech's life. When stuff is chaotic, whether it's our fault, their fault or not, like the problem ends up landing in sterile tech. And we need to decrease the noise before it gets to you so that you have less big problems to deal with. And you know what that means for reps is we get a better output on the other end.
Well, yeah, how you described, the end state is we want reps to be home in time for dinner. We want them sleeping good at night. We want them having confidence that the tray's going to be there, already is there, at least is on its way when they go to bed or when they wake up in the morning.
Yeah.
That's an end state I think every single person can get behind, right? We all want that. And I don't see anyone fighting against that at concept. But obviously, there's a long way from where we are today to getting there. And to your point, whatever the future is, we need to be prepared for it as an industry, but we need to be prepared for the complexity that it's going to bring. If it's one big step forward into robotics, or if it's a couple of steps forward into different angles, or a couple steps back, depending on how the rollouts go. We've seen launches go before that don't go too well, and you got to regroup as an industry or as a company. I do want to call out a couple of conversations here. I've got your post pulled up on the robotics things, just so we get a little bit of feedback. So Chris Jones, who's actually joining us tomorrow on the Driving Dirty series, along with Michael Matthews, he commented in here about tray reduction, and that it's a really hard thing to tackle unless we're going to be doing something like single use, and it's a challenge that cuts across the reps, the distributors, and of course the manufacturers. So what conversations have you had around the tray reduction piece? Like, are you hearing its robotic conversation as potentially increasing our numbers of trays, adding more complexity to an already complex system, or is it being packaged with trying to drive efficiency actually to reduce those total numbers of trays?
Yeah. The way I hear robots come up in most of my conversations is still about the selling side. Okay. Can I convince a surgeon or a buyer that this is good? And some people right now are believers and some people are not believers. Okay. And so I've heard it less from an operational impact, but mostly from a sales impact.
Okay. Yeah. So we got another quote here from David Cole, who's talking about the competition piece, which I think you just kind of alluded to with the sales side of things. So, I thought that's really interesting. And then, of course, I got my comment here that says, I thought this is interesting, Zach, and I'm going to start following you to hear more of your insights here. The piece, real quick, I think I saw you comment on this, but I do want to get your insight on it, because I'm going to be talking to Mark Copeland on Friday, and I'm going to ask him this question around the Schwarzenegger Chief Movement Officer promo that I think it was Zimmer Biomet that kind of positioned him in that role. Do you have an opinion on that choice? What are your thoughts on just the marketing aspect of that conversation?
It's one of those things that I spent about 5-10 minutes thinking about, and then said, this isn't my day job. My day job is to better understand reps and build them solutions.
Okay.
And so it's interesting. And maybe they're trying to go DTC. I've seen some great comments about that.
Yeah.
You know,
Mhm.
maybe it's a waste of money. Maybe it's, you know, big corporate classic, make themselves feel good. Maybe it talks about their statement to their competitors and that, hey, we are doubling down in this space and we are going to be the company of movement in the future. But I think that I wake up today and like, well, still got to do the same things. Still got to talk to reps. Still got to understand their problems. Still got to solve them.
So that's your humility showing again. Okay, let me
Yeah.
ask you a follow up here on that. If you could pick a different chief movement officer for that brand, who would you pick if you couldn't pick Schwarzenegger?
Chief movement. Pick a pickleball player. Who's a
Yeah,
world
just a
class
random one.
pickleball? I
Do they
don't.
rank them?
I don't. Yes, they
They
do.
do. It's
They
already
do.
that. Oh
There's
man,
pick an 85-year-old pickleball world championship player or someone who does something active and aspirational for
yeah,
what you think uh, a future customer, to just put it bluntly, would say like, I want to be that. We're not going to be Arnold, you know, it's not going to happen, but
right,
maybe there's something aspirational about that. And then you can create, and that's assuming it's an advertisement play. It's
right.
about increasing market share.
Okay. Uh, yeah, first thought that came to my mind was that Australian Olympic breakdancer, you know, the one that got all the press. But, you know, your point about pickleball, I think, is an interesting intersection of, hey, this sport is hot right now. I don't even know if I would call it a sport. That's going to offend some people. I do not apologize, be offended. But no, um, but, you know, culturally relevant. And, you know, part of the Schwarzenegger thing that if we're just kind of getting off topic here on the marketing side, but he's kind of old news. You know, he's hadn't been in a movie in a while, hadn't really been in politics in a while. I thought we were kind of like, oh, he's still alive. So I'm not dogging anything about his value that, you know, he could bring to the relationship,
Yeah.
what his vision is. But yeah, there's a little bit of potential cultural disconnect. Like, what is actually hot? Who are the people that, you know, demographics that are going to be getting implants here soon? Who are they listening to? Is it Schwarzenegger? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd like to get the case made for me. But Zach, we are coming up on the end of time. A carousing conversation today on all kinds of different topics, and hopefully this is the beginning of a lot more conversations that the network is going to have with you, like our network through Beyond Clean, the clean freaks who hopefully are being introduced to you for the first time, particularly because, you know, you're out there trying to solve these issues on the rep side. And like we started on this conversation, the better processes that our rep partners have, man, the better it's going to be for sterile processing, because we want to get home in time for dinner as well.
Yeah.
We want to not be stressing out. What is the first case going to look like when we clock back in the morning? So all of these
Yeah.
things that you're trying to solve is going to hit us as well. So how can folks get in contact with you, or get connected with you if they want to reach out and talk some more?
Yeah. LinkedIn is where I live. Just come on over. You don't even have to connect. Just engage with content that makes sense. If you want to send me a DM, that's great. More than happy to connect and start learning more about sterile processing, because I need a lot more knowledge there. Also, I need a lot more knowledge about nursing and being an admin. You know, one of the things I wanted to hit on today is how important teamwork at like in your facility is. When I'm talking to reps about how to make sterile processing better and what they want to understand about their job, is I'm learning that comes back to having the mindset that different people sign our checks, but our success is aligned. We have to be a team. And the other is that no big policy can fix all of this magically. It's up to us to talk to each other, to know each other, to help each other out, and also to not hold grudges when there's problems. Just work it out. Think about it like a relationship. And I know that's really hard, but what I've seen from the best reps with the best relationship with sterile processing is that they bring those ideas to the table every day.
Well, that's a great segue, because I think we're going to talk a little bit about that relationship piece tomorrow with Chris and Michael. It may also come on Friday as well with Mark Copeland. So with that, I'm going to close our session for today. I want to thank everybody tuning in from coast to coast and from border to border here on Driving Dirty. Hope you got to your hospital safely, or if you're tuning in at the end of the day, enjoy your drive home. Hope you're jamming out to some tunes after you finish this interview. Zach, thank you again for your time today, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Hank. Bye.